welcome to One Track to the Future, the new podcast from the International Monorail Association. I'm your host, Karin Helmstaedt, and it's a pleasure to kick off this series on their behalf. The International Monorail Association, or IMA, aims to organize the global monorail sector, to promote monorail systems around the world, to inform the public about them, and to establish international performance standards. So it's a members association of 37 companies from nearly 20 countries that all subscribe to this one mission. And this podcast is kind of a heads up on the part of the IMA to say, hey, all you rail and infrastructure buffs out there, here we are, this is what we'd like to do, and this is why you should sit up and take notice, even if you're not necessarily a transit nerd. Well, because monorail technology has some real advantages in rapidly growing metropolitan areas. And in light of the challenges that we're facing globally, the ongoing climate crisis for one, and an acute global energy crisis, there is certainly a business case for monorail that's worth examining. So with a view to the IMA's first appearance at the Intertrans Trade Fair next September in Berlin, we're going to learn all about monorail technology and why it can be a cheaper, greener, and quick-to-implement solution for urban transport systems. And for this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Marko Kroenke, who's president of the IMA, and his predecessor, Carlos Banchik, who held the position until September of last year. So Marko is an engineer with more than 25 years of international experience in the rail sector, including senior product engineering and innovation roles at both Alstom and Bombardier Transportation. He's an expert on autonomous transit applications and has been involved with monorail and the IMA for nearly 10 years. He's now with Ricardo Rail, where he's Director of Business Development in Canada, and he's joining us from Kingston, Ontario, which by a grand coincidence happens to be my hometown. So delighted to connect with you, Marko, and greetings to you in Kingston.
Thank you, Karin. It's a pleasure meeting you and discussing you about monorails.
Carlos, on the other hand, is a civil engineer who's originally from Argentina, and he's based now in the US, and he's a recognized expert in the design and construction engineering of monorail projects. So he's president and founder of Innova Technologies. That's a leader in structural, transportation, and construction engineering that he started back in 2003. And Carlos has worked and is currently working on many major monorail projects, including the Las Vegas monorail, Sao Paulo's Line 15, Bangkok's Yellow and Pink lines, and some major monorail projects in Cairo, Egypt. And so we look forward to hearing about those. Welcome to you also, Carlos. And welcome to both of you. Thanks so much for joining me for this first episode. It's very exciting.
Glad to be here.
So I guess we'll start off with you, Marko, seeing as you're the current president of the IMA, because most people, of course, associate monorails with tourist destinations, like for instance, Las Vegas, where Carlos is based, or Disney World. Can you tell us why they can be of benefit to society and to cities well beyond this classic amusement park model?
Sure. Monorails are often known in amusement parks, especially in futuristic-looking ones like in Walt Disney World, that actually has begun operation in 1971, and they're still looking good, right? Monorails can be found more often in dense urban areas, providing a more mature transit system in many cities like Tokyo, where they operated since 1964, serving the capacity there. And they have more than 120,000 people per day. The famous one is the very first monorail in Wuppertal, the Schwebebahn. That's a hanging type or suspended monorail, started more than 100 years ago in 1901. Recently, most monorails have been opened in China, Asia, North Africa, and South America.
It's amazing because I don't think people realize just how far back they actually go. So thanks for listing some of those real kind of heritage projects. Now, Carlos, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Monorails are a transport system that, as you've said, very often is mostly overlooked, sometimes even perceived to be a bit pokey. And yet there's also So interestingly, this very strong futuristic association of progress, kind of a science fiction connotation to them, is that a contradiction, do you think? And why are they not yet mainstream?
Yes, Karin, I believe it is futuristic because the structure is so streamlined. The monorail structures are highly effective, and the structural elements are to be manufactured to a high degree of precision. I think they are overlooked because the planning professionals associate complexities that they have not yet touched or approached in their professional lives, and and they are pushing the limits on what's done on heavy civil construction. The current number of projects should make it clear that there is enough demand for this type of projects and there is a place for them on the palette of planners along with metros, light rails, or other transportation solutions. For projects needing elevating solutions, monorail is the clear choice because they are fast to construct, they have a lower system implementation cost, they have the ability to integrate the structures in the urban grade with radius as small as 70 meters and slope up to 6%. They are light structures in themselves instead of the large, massive bridge decks that you see on other transportation systems. And then there is the neat opportunity to create linear parks or bicycle lanes under the monorails that provide a whole new avenue for the cities where we build them.
So you've just made a long list there, really. But if you were going to tell somebody sort of the main competitive advantages of monorail, what makes it a viable, desirable transport system for urban areas, how would you sum that up?
Well, I see the monorail as a way of providing a high quality metro like transportation service, affordable, and solving transit solutions or transit problems on a given community. I see them as a way of decreasing the CO2 emissions through the use of efficient structures. We calculated that the savings in concrete are between 40 and 50% of similar structures. And then the ability of monorails to insert themselves into congested regions, permitting an urban solution not available on other systems.
Okay, thanks for that. Marko, where do you think that monorails could have a clear advantage over traditional metro, subway lines, and of course trams?
Metro types of transit system have their own advantages as it depends heavily on the application. So monorails clearly require the least amount of space as they are typically elevated and they run on a simple single track. Monorails have the smallest footprint on land usage. So this goes in hand with a fast construction time with prefabricated track work. And while installation of this infrastructure, we do not need to close any roads and do not disturb traffic. So this means the elevated system provides a service on segregated tracks with no interference of any other transport system. It has no level crossing and operates in the air, so way beyond streets and over infrastructures. The monorail system has its advantages of best urban fit, I would say, meaning small curvatures and steep grades allows easy integration with an existing dense and crowded city.
Maybe I could just get you to clarify for our listeners this what you mean by steep grades. So you mean sort of tackling differences or differences of in gradient of roads and hills, for instance?
Yeah, it's this slope. If you want to go either onto like mountain areas, you don't have necessarily to dig a tunnel somewhere, but with this higher degree of getting these slopes, you have the possibilities to go beyond some buildings with a certain slope then.
I don't want to get too technical today, but there are, of course, these two main types of monorail system, suspended and straddled, and perhaps you could just quickly explain the difference.
Yeah, that might be a little bit confusing. So suspended monorails are hanging. So the bogie is above the vehicle with the track on top of the system. And there are many suspended monorails, like in Chiba in Japan or the already mentioned Wuppertaler Schwebebahn in Germany. The other type, the straddled ones, are running on its own rubber-tired wheels on top of a single beam and have multiple functions. So they are guiding wheels on each side of this beam that are used for both the steering and against tipping over. So actually they embrace the track.
You know, Marko, both you and Carlos have already emphasized the speed of planning, construction, and implementation, but there's really also a business case to be made in terms of both investment and operation. Can you elaborate on that just a bit?
Absolutely, yes. Typically, monorail systems are fully automated and driverless systems, so meaning they have the highest possible safety standards and they run most efficiently. Just think about an elevator. You go daily in and out and you don't need anybody else and it always works, right? So meaning for public interest, it is way cheaper than any other systems, as mentioned in the previous advantages. It is much faster, so way less risk for politicians, for cities, in order to get those systems in their cities.
Those are, of course, attractive advantages. And of course, I guess what people also really want to know is how do monorails score in terms of capacity compared to, for instance, trams or metros?
Yeah, both. Monorails can be found in smaller systems, what we just have seen in amusement parks, but as well on larger systems in like cities and airports. They have typically higher capacities as trams, streetcars. Usually, they lead to medium-sized metros, which is typically 25,000 people per hour per direction. This is our standardized measurement unit for transporting passenger. The very large monorail system is running in Sao Paulo with a designed capacity of 48,000 people per hour per direction.
That sounds pretty impressive. Now, Carlos, I want to come over to you because you've really been involved with the creation of these monorail systems for so long. Tell us about the aesthetic quality of these systems. We talked about the futuristic look of things earlier, but do you see them enhancing a lot of urban landscapes in the future? And tell us about the advantages in terms of passenger experience.
Yeah, definitely. The monorail structure, as Marco stated, is a very light structure, very small columns inserted in the urban environment. And for instance, we got a report from Metro Sao Paulo where the monorail is a system with the highest level of comfort, customer satisfaction among all the systems that they operate, something like 97%, if I recall correctly, which is amazing. I believe the feeling of floating over the city adds to the experience of riding a monorail. On top of that, there is the advantage that we've seen recently on a trip to Sao Paulo, where you see buildings and new infrastructure being built around the stations, making rejuvenating the city around the stations. And not only that, but you see linear parks under the guideways that were not, and bicycle lanes that were not available before. So this is a whole redesign of an urban area that in many cases was not considered useful in previous years because it was just between two roads. And now all of a sudden, with the monorail, we're integrating these areas into the center of town. In the case of Sao Paulo, they have riderships on excess of 100,000 passengers per day. And that tells you what is the impact on these type of projects.
Mm-hmm. Marko, have you got anything to add in terms of how they can affect the urban landscapes of the future?
I fully agree to Carlos. The passenger experience is just outstanding because monorails are on typically elevated systems, so they are exposed and the tracks are almost invisible. So many designs in the past have this futuristic look and people get engaged with it. They memorize it. They positively contribute to a city image. So the passenger experience in monorails is just phenomenal and gives, it great memories for tourists and can be as well like an iconic element.
Exactly. It's proven already to be such an iconic element at the various tourist places where they've been employed. Now, Carlos, you built your very first monorail back in 1994, so you've really been engaging with this technology for a very long time, and you're very convinced that it's the way to go. How does the infrastructure come together for all of the infrastructure nerds out there that I mentioned earlier? Can you just walk us quickly through the steps?
Yeah, I'll be brief. There is a need to assess the needs of the community and then carry a technology selection process to address those needs with demand, origin, destination surveys, etc. Then, if the monorail is the right choice because of the inherent advantages that we offer, then different contracting mechanisms are available to carry out the actual design and construction of the monorail. Once the project has been constructed, there is something that we've seen that really allows the monorails to deliver what we promise, which is the need to have all the teams involved, agencies, contractors, rolling stock, and system suppliers sharing the same vision in terms of what is needed and the timeliness in which the designs need to be implemented.
Okay, so we've talked a lot at this point about all of the advantages of a monorail, but every system, of course, does have its disadvantages. And Marko, I'm going to come to you to talk about that. For instance, I'm imagining you're over there in Canada. I can't imagine that they're suitable for cities that get a lot of snow. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely, and it's always about the right technology selection, and monorails is not always the best choice. Obviously, in like harsh winter conditions like here in Canada, with any kind of rubber tired system, it has disadvantages against like conventional steel wheel rails, like any other bus or road vehicles. So steel wheels have a contact surface of only the size of about a coin, so it's just squeezing any snow or ice away. Whereas rubber tires, they tend to slide and slip much earlier, so this is definitely a disadvantage. But we have some research programs with some university academics who do investigation with really, really promising solutions, whether it's heating or other ways of condition for the track. Another disadvantage is obviously with the rubber tires are the change of the tires. So we expect that they last more than 150,000 kilometers, but it is more costly than with steel rail systems then.
So there definitely is an issue with wear and tear that you wouldn't have with a classic steel track system.
It is more wear and tear on the rubber tires, so you just have to change them more often, but it is really known and used in the industry as we have bus operators, so they last much longer than on buses. So it's nothing different than on this type of operation service.
But you mentioned you do have some solutions in the works. How can IMA help specifically with these kinds of challenges in specified projects?
Yeah, both. We have an expertise in our group as well from some members who are providing tires. So we have deep knowledge about how to use them, how to make the right specification for this system with tires. But as well, research program, we were just having an investigation with the Fachhochschule Aachen with more than 220 students working on more than 20 projects on how to improve the system in winterized condition. And there were amazing ideas coming out of these projects. So that comes from conventional heating systems, but really snow plowing, ice crusher system, new ones, how to cover the system and automatically uncover them. So great ideas. And next to the manufacturers who have ideas as well on hand.
Right.
Exactly. So, Carlos, do you have something to add
Well,
to that?
I just wanted to mention that some of our members already have systems operating on areas like in Tokyo that have substantial can have substantial snows and snowfall, and they have systems that involve scraping and de-icing carried within the trains and sprayed over the beams as needed. So there are solutions within the industry, and the focus of the IMA is spreading them among more practitioners so they understand what the true boundaries of the technology are.
Okay, and Carlos, because you're our past president, IMA is already into its second decade. It was founded in 2009, as you know. And if you had to sum it up, what would you say it's accomplished so far?
Well, I think it has brought up awareness of what the monorail industry is capable of offering, and we can establish that some of the projects that we have been able to deliver are based on the labors that we have done in terms of sharing these concepts with people.
And when we speak of the global monorail sector, just give us an idea, how big is it really?
The projects are multi-year projects, and so it's difficult to assess the yearly volume. I would say that there are, in this moment, more than $10 billion in ongoing projects, and there is a probability of a $2 or $3 billion rate of investment per year and growing at a rapid pace.
So obviously currently underway, you've mentioned projects in Cairo and Sao Paulo, etc. Just tell us maybe some of the other key projects. I mentioned some of them earlier, but I know you're involved in several.
Yeah, some of the ones that I'm aware of outside China are, for instance, the extension of Line 15 in Sao Paulo, the yellow and pink lines in Bangkok. Those are 66 kilometers. The one in Sao Paulo is 11 additional kilometers. The Cairo monorails and to New Capital and 6th of October, those are 100 kilometers of new rail. The Panama Line 3 is 24 kilometers of rail. Salvador, Brazil, Line 3 is also a 24-kilometer monorail. Santiago de Caballeros in Dominican Republic is a 15-kilometer project. There are studies of feasibility in Los Angeles, Sepulveda Pass, and Miami Beach, among some other ones. There is the planned completion of the monorail in Mumbai. So there might be more under studies, but right there you have several billions dollars worth of investment currently underway.
And typically, just because you mentioned, that they're multi-year projects, on the other hand, they are much quicker to complete and to realize than a traditional subway system. So kind of what time frame are we looking at typically? You mentioned 24 kilometers of monorail. How long does something like that take?
Yeah, a project like that is probably from beginning conception to operation between 3 or 4 years.
Okay. And when it comes to actually sort of expanding, I mean, there's a lot going on out there, and I think our listeners will be amazed to hear that long list of projects. But when it comes to actually then expanding and growing the industry itself, what main challenges do you see coming at you?
Well, I think one of the issues that IMA is addressing is having monorail specifications that allow more practitioners to support this type of projects technically. There is a need to provide a forum to enable transit authorities and city planners to have a more total system approach to find the best fit solutions to their transportation needs, and that's one of the goals of IMA. There is also a need of improving the civil-train interaction by improving the delivery of tight fabrication tolerance. Then there is the need to improve the scanning of guideway beams and deliver accurate information for construction and operation of those systems. And lastly, I would say there is a need to strengthen the industry by becoming members of the IMA and actively being involved in it so we can grow it as an industry providing the solutions that we need in this century.
The IMA has actually seen quite some growth just in the last little while. I think when I got in touch the first time, the numbers were down around 30, and it's already up to 37.
That's correct. That's a testament to what Marko and the team in the administration are doing.
Marko, what are your comments in terms of what challenges you see coming at you now that you've undertaken this post?
Definitely, there is a strong conventional lobby in the railway industry towards having the proven design system that are already in place. There are many systems that are just expanding on the existing network, and that's totally fine. Moving ahead with the same metro type of systems there. They're using a different kind of technology. You cannot combine the same track, obviously, with metro systems. So typically, we are looking more for greenfield, so-called greenfield applications, so new lines, whether it's a connector of specific points, whether it is a circulator in specific areas collecting people. They can be found on airports with high capacity needs there. These are the typical projects we are looking for and would advocate those systems as a technology selection.
Obviously, lots of room to grow, and I understand. I mean, industries are always a little bit kind of reluctant to change in a way. If monorail has to really establish itself as the new kid on the block, in a way, is what you're saying.
That's right. There's a lot of restraints and not knowing about the system actually. And as Carlos mentioned, we are giving not only advocacy, but we are training as well, both many cities, many consultancies, many other universities to bring it in the curriculum. This is our key role as our association.
Exactly, and I guess that feeds right into my final question. Perhaps you've even already answered it, but you could maybe make an addition or two if you're looking towards the future. I don't know how long are you going to be in this job for 10 years as well, or how long are the terms?
Oh yeah, monorails are as long as the railway industry. They are designed for 30 years design life. So once you start a project in our age, you will come to the retirement phase then for sure.
which is far off in the future, on that one track to the future. But looking to that future, what more could the IMA do, and what are you specifically hoping to achieve in your tenure as president?
Yeah, the future is bright for monorails, given the economic and the ecological advantages compared to other technologies in many applications, with its lower initial cost, the fast implementation time, less land usage, and no disturbance of other traffic. This has actually led to high interest and many requests, especially from the high density cities around the world. As Carlos just listed, a few ones that are in progress or in planning. So they are multi-dollar billion projects around the globe. And the IMA helps to advocate monorails. We will publish a market study for monorail systems, and we are currently writing a performance-based specification. This can be used by operators or authorities for their tendering processes as a standard, with a focus on the highest safety standards and best practices. So overall, I think we are on one track to the future.
And a good track it is, and that market study for monorail systems will be presented, I believe, at the Intertrans in September. So we will actually have the occasion to meet around that. Isn't that exciting? Get out of this virtual situation. Carlos, anything to add from you about looking on that, right down that one track to the future?
I'm excited about the vision about implementing monorails. I think is the right solution for the right time in terms of the social and ecological impacts that we bring to the planning stages. So when you see hundreds of thousands of people using integrated from areas that were outside the nice areas of the town, and you see them integrated with a reliable and efficient system, you see the type of reaction or the type of utilization we've seen in Sao Paulo, where all of a sudden you have 100,000 people a day. And by the way, the capacity of this line will be 450,000 when we are completed with Cidade Tiradentes. It provides the ability for a person to experience the modern comforts of life, and provides them a way of transportation where they can be integrated within the subway systems very effectively, and have reliable times of travel. In 40 minutes they are where they need to be, and as opposed to 2 hours or 2 hours and a half, like sometimes it happens, and depending on the weather and the traffic conditions. I think we are the right answer to this time, and we are very excited to be part of it.
So to learn more about the International Monorail Association and monorails in general, you can tune into Marko Kroenke's online presentation that will be happening on May the 20th. And Marko, I'll just remind our listeners where to find that. The presentation will be published on our YouTube channel, and listeners can also subscribe to our social media accounts to stay up to date and be informed in time about the next upcoming podcast episodes. And there's a lot more info on our website at www.monorailx.org, and of course in the show notes. So you can find IMA on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, the whole gambit. And certainly don't be shy, and do send us some feedback if you're so inclined. In our next podcast episode on July the 1st, I'll speak to the IMA founder, Jaap Kettel, about his original vision for the monorail industry. So we look forward to that and hope you'll be tuning in. Thanks again to Marko Kroenke and to Carlos Banchik. Thanks to both of you for joining me today, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Karin.
And to all of our listeners out there, thanks very much for listening. I'm Karin Helmstaedt signing off here in Berlin. And until next time, go well, everyone. And we'll see you next time, hear from you next time on One Track to the Future.